I guess we can start. So, hi everyone, welcome to the stream. My name is Paweł Zajączkowski, and today I will tell you a story about how to survive in haunted projects. So, how to deal with issues that we can find in our projects. The presentation is going to be in English, but if you prefer to ask questions or type in chat in Polish, that's also fine. Right, so this is our start, and we are going to start a little story. Let's get back around 100 years. Let's imagine that you are a private detective that was hired to retrieve some documents from abandoned mansion. Right? The family hired you. The owner of the mansion disappeared to some mysterious circumstances. So you go there to the site, you see this beautiful mansion, you get inside, and then there is the classic horror cliche. So the doors are closing behind you. Right? But you have a task at hand, so let's get there. You go to another floor and you find some documents that you are meant to retrieve. But then you realize that something is off in this mansion, right? There are some monsters, there are some ghosts, some traps, some problems that you have to solve to get away from. Right? And this might be a difficult task. It might be difficult to actually get out from this mansion. Maybe there's doors are behind some trap. There is maybe some ritual that you have to do. In general, this might serve as an analogy to certain situation that you can find in our projects, right? So you might be on a project, you might be new on a project, you might be there for some time, but there might be some dead bodies falling out from the closet. There might be some issues that make you angry, make you sad, make you stressed, right? And how should we deal with that? Now, you might think that, okay, I'm working in IT, I'm a programmer, tester, whatever else I'm doing. I'm just sitting in front of the computer, clicking stuff, so am I really in danger compared to haunted mansions and some bloodthirsty monsters that are out to get me? Well, the answer is probably yes, because if you are stressed at your job, if you are not doing very well, if you are afraid, if every day when you are waking up before you go to sleep you think that I don't want to go to this job, it has an effect on you, right? So it might deteriorate your mental health, it might lead to some serious issues, both mental and actually physical, right? So this is really an important topic to look into, and we are going to explore several scenarios, several situations, several things that should help you. Right, a few words about me. This QR code leads to my LinkedIn if you would like to connect, or maybe you have some rather private question that you don't want to share on chat with everyone. You are welcome to get there, of course, also in Polish. I'm also available on some social media. I have a blog that has a Java name, but it's not really about Java anymore. It's about software and peopleware. There should be slides from this presentation there. I'm not sure if there is any recording already, but it will be. Right, as my background, I started as a developer for roughly 12 years. Then I moved to the so-called dark side, and currently I'm taking care of several, actually 11 teams of DevOps and developers at Xibia Poland. You might know this company by the name of PGS Software, previously in Poland, but we merged with into the larger group 2 years ago, and now it's Xibia Poland and Xibia Global. Alright, let's get back to our topic. So,
Paweł, halo, halo. Bardzo słabo tutaj Cię słyszymy.
Okay, let's get back maybe a bit closer to microphone. Maybe if you can do something on your side. Alright, so our plan. Let's first think about what do we want from our projects, okay? So what's really important for us. Then we get to a list of potential problems, around 10 or 11, and we will dive a bit deeper into each of them. And then at the end we'll have some so-called miscellanea. If you don't know how to name the last part of the presentation, you can call it miscellanea. Alright, so let's start with our philosophical question. Maybe I can actually take this microphone out a little bit. Oh, it will be problematic. Let's keep it like it. Alright, so what do we really want? So there is a book a famous book by Daniel Pink called The Drive, and there are 3 pillars of motivations there. So we have autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy, so we want to be able to get into our boat, row alone in this boat, make some decisions, and have some results. Okay, observe that. Then mastery, so we would like to be good at what we are doing. Usually people in IT actually are passionate about what they are doing. It's nice to be better at some skills. It's nice to observe your progress, and also it's nice when somebody else actually recognizes that you're good, right? Maybe you don't want to admit this, but we like that. And it's good to have a purpose, right? Not just moving bits and bytes from one place to another, but actually do some meaningful job. All right, so now what kind of strategy you can employ to fight with those monsters, okay? So in general, in biology, we can say that we have 3 strategies how to deal with stressors. So we can either confront it, right? Change it, fight it, take out our weapon, our sword or something and fight the monster, right? Do some change in the project, perhaps. Or we can accept it, right? Maybe we can befriend the monster, okay? Maybe we can somehow slip past it, right? So kind of, the problem is still there, but we are okay with this. And the third possibility is you can just escape, right? But the question is if you can always escape our haunted mansion, right? Maybe there is some trap or a ritual that is guarding our doors, and in real life maybe it's a different situation. Like for instance, you don't want to change your job because you just taken the loan for the mortgage or the loan. Maybe you have a child on the way. Maybe you are just scared. Maybe the market is not very good. Okay, so it's not always possible. So I will try to focus on the first 2 problems, first 2 solutions. Right, so let's start with changes. There's a nice book by Chip and Dan Heath called The Switch, about how to deal with general changes. There's a nice metaphor there. A rider on an elephant that is going through the path. So the rider is our rational side, right? So first we have to know what do we want to change and how do we want to change this, right? But then there is an elephant. This is an emotional side of us, but also people around us that we need to influence, right? So elephant is very powerful and it's a bit difficult to control. So we have to somehow take care of the emotions. And then at the end there is the paths of the environment. Actually, we can often deal with the change by just shaping the environment around us, right? Example from real life would be if you want to lose some weight, right, and you have some potato chips in your home and you are sitting there on the couch and thinking, all right, maybe I won't eat those potato chips today, maybe just a little bit, right? But if you just won't buy those potato chips, if you don't have them in the kitchen, then this is shaping of the environment that is helping you to do some changes. So this is our approach to change. Then we have acceptance, right? So first of all, it's important to acknowledge that what's happening in our head is just a perception of reality, right? This is some kind of model. So we have a project, we have some objective situation, and you can have 3 different people who react to this very differently, right? One might be horrified, the second might be okay, and the third might enjoy this, right? So the good news is that actually without changing anything in a project, you can actually better yourself, but by changing your approach, right? So first of all, it's nice to try to understand what is actually happening. This is something that could be really helpful, right? For instance, we often see the situation that, okay, I don't like the situation, the management is stupid, they are making stupid decisions. But if you just talk to them, try to understand what's happening, get some information, get some answers, then you might know why something is happening, and it should be very helpful for you. Then another important thing is that basically what's important for our well-being is not the state, but the changes in state, right? So if something gets worse, then we are reacting negatively to this. We might be maybe in the past we were in a very good project, and now we are in a just good project. So there is a negative change, and this makes us upset, even though the project is still, let's say, good. Right? So in general, our emotional reaction to negative changes is stronger than emotional reaction to positive changes. So for instance, if you lose $100, the emotional amplitude is the same as if you have gained $200, right? So if you lose the same amount of money than you gained, it's twice as strong. There's a lot of similar tricks and ideas in the book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. I highly recommend it. Okay, by the way, let me know if you can hear me better or if it's still bad. Maybe I can try to just grab this microphone and talk to this, and we'll see. Alright, let's move on. So let's get to our concrete huntings, guys. And I'll just do that because this is not a comfortable position. Okay, let's do this like this. Hope you can hear me well enough for now. So our first hunting, we have this weird person in a suit that talks the language that we don't understand. We can't talk to each other, right? So there is a miscommunication between business people and tech people. What's the, let's say, origin of this? There's a thing called the curse of knowledge. It starts with small children. They basically assume that everyone else knows what they feel and feels the same basically, and knows what they know. And they kind of grow out from this, but to an extent. Right? We still have some miscommunications between business people and technical people. So what can we do with this, right? Maybe we can use some analogies. Sometimes if you want to persuade some business people to do something they don't understand, they don't know why we need to do something. For instance, we are building a system and we have to invest a lot in infrastructure, DevOps, let's say, so we would like to spend a lot of time on those foundations and infrastructure things. You can look at this as an analogy of building a house. Right? If you are buying a house, you are just buying like the thing that you can see, right? The walls, the roof, etc. You don't care about foundations. Why do you need foundations, right? But in fact, we know that houses require foundations. So as an analogy, projects require infrastructure. So you can actually approach from this angle. You can think about us as well. Business is working for our clients, and we are working for our business. So this is actually, the obligation is on our side to make the communication transparent and working. Also, business might have a lot of issues and pressures that you don't actually see shielded from that, right? So it's good to have some empathy to those people, get to know each other, talk about the issues, what's happening, what's the business situation, which will make the communication a bit better. And be patient, right? Sometimes it takes several tries to get everything working and the communication flowing. Now, we all have this, most of us have this very old monolith in the basement of our mansion, of our project, right? That is actually making most of the money, but the code is really bad and nobody wants to touch this, it's risky, etc. And you'd like to do some changes to this, right? Maybe rewrite something, maybe fix something, maybe add some new technology. So basically, you are talking to business people and they don't see any value in this, right? Why should you do this? Why should you do this? They don't understand that we are supposed to do this. Okay, so what you can do here is think about using language of benefits, right? So try to come up with what benefits we are getting from this change in the end. Maybe you can employ some Excel, do some numbers, right? For instance, imagine that you are coming to a business person and tell them that, okay, the builds are slow, we are annoyed because of this, right? So what this person is supposed to think? Well, the builds are slow, they're annoyed, but, well, life goes on, right? But if you look at this from numeric perspective, okay, the build takes 20 minutes, maybe we can spend 3 days to improve our CI/CD, maybe do something in parallel, and we can do this in 5 minutes. And if you multiply this by the number of developers, number of builds per year, then you can save, say, 20 days. And this is a business proposal. Invest 3 days, get 20 days. You can get with that to the business people. Right? In one company, we had this quarterly, I believe, brainstorming about what technical things we can improve. And we come up with some ideas that would give some smaller, maybe larger benefits. We are looking at the size of the benefit, let's say, and the cost of this. And naturally, we identified some low-hanging fruits that we could do, and we spent some time in the sprint to actually implement the outcome of this brainstorming. If you have some kind of Scrum or burn down charts, or you can calculate some velocity, etc., you can actually observe over sprints that your velocity is actually declining, and use this as some argument in a discussion. Sometimes if disaster happens, right, if the production fails or if there's a security incident, there's a window to improve stuff. Of course, incidents are not good, but in the end there's an opportunity to actually fix some stuff around this. Okay, so we fix the reason, and by the way, since we are changing this to mitigate another risk of another disaster, we can also do this and that. Right, the management might be a little bit more prone to suggestions after this. And also try to get on board with the strategy of your company. Right? Often we think that those decisions are bad, are stupid, right? We should fix the technical debt, etc. But remember that technical debt is just a tool, much as in finance, right? You are using this, right, and you are paying back, and you get something. For instance, maybe the plan of the CEO or the management of the company is to sell the company half a year, and they don't want to invest now in fixing the debt, right? If you knew this, then it would kind of make it easier to go for that, right? You are taking the debt now, the company will be sold, and that's just the situation on the ground. So it's not that management is stupid, for instance, they have some plan. It might be helpful in general, right? Moving on. In general, if you think about relations with client, you might think about this analogy that you are a barber or a hairdresser, and you have a client, right? The client is a new client for you, and the client wants to be cut the same as he was cut for the last 20 years, always the same. Looking at this client, thinking, yeah, it might not be the best idea. Okay, this type of haircut does not match the shape of face of this person, of the age or whatever, etc. You would not recommend it, right? But basically our obligation is to give recommendations. What would you do? But in the end, if you just forcefully cut this client in a way you think is good, not in the way the client wanted, you will probably lose this client. He will not get back to you, right? So in the end, client is always right? But our obligation is to suggest stuff that could be improved and give some recommendations. And we sometimes encounter this situation, all the code is bad in the project, basically nobody cares anymore. Why should I write a clean code or add tests if there are no tests and nobody cares, everything is broken. There is this so-called broken windows theory. It's originated in the 80s or the 90s in the US. Basically they observed that if there is one broken window in the neighborhood and it is fixed quickly, then it's fine, nothing bad will happen. But yeah, if there's one broken window, it's left there to be, right? Soon there will be second broken window, and the next, and the next, and in the end you will have a disaster. Everything will be broken basically because nobody cares about this, and everything is broken. Why should you care about this one, keeping this one window alive, right? And it's similar with code. Every code, all the code is bad, basically people don't have that much incentive to fix something. But basically what we can do here, there's always this first step, right? Maybe you have some separate functionality, maybe some separate module where you can start, and we can just assume, okay, from now on, for this part, we'll get the test coverage to 70-80% or whatever, right? It might take a lot of time at first, because there's a lot of connection with this old part, it's not tested maybe, etc. But you have to start somewhere. In one company, and we have this gamification of this. So there was this Boy Scout rule, basically. Boy Scout rule in real life is that you get into the forest and you try to leave the forest in a better state as before. So if you leave some trash, then you get your trash, and also maybe collect some trash that somebody else left. And this also works in code, right? right? So the idea was that if you are changing something in the code, then let's fix a little bit around it, right? And we have this competition. If you do some Boy Scouts, some change, then you print out the code. It was before COVID in physical office. You print out the code, you put it on a wall. What was the version previously, the version that was fixed, and people were voting on that, right? So basically you could win in a week or in a month or in a year. You could be Scout of the Year, for instance, and it worked quite well. People were enjoying this, and we are actually improving the quality of our code base. Right, moving on to another monsters that we can find. There's the puppeteer, right, that restricts our autonomy and is able to control us, basically. So a few words about micromanagement. So often we don't see the pressure that is put on business people, right? They are all the time they are asked how the project is going, how much money something will cost, why are we burning so much money on something, etc., etc. And some of this pressure might spill to you, right? This is sometimes this is happening. What you can do here, you can think about when you're starting in a project. Might take some time, to gain some recognition, to be seen as being competent, as being trusted. So maybe time will fix it a little bit. There's this mere exposure principle in psychology that if you spend some time with a person, usually your relations will improve. It's not always happening, right? But in general, it's worth to invest a little bit of time with relations with your business, right? If you are working in an office, maybe you can get some coffee, something, go to dinner, whatever, maybe some integration with beer after team integration after hours, etc. And in the end, it probably will be easier, right? They will probably get better on you. And also, if you are working in some international environment, be aware of the cultural differences, right? Some cultures there are a lot of cultural factors. For instance, there is the power distance. So if a country has high power distance, then the boss is very important, right? You can stand up to your boss, etc. If, for instance, in India, it's very high. Power distance, and in Scandinavian countries it's very low. Poland is somewhere in between. In IT probably it's closer to the lower power distance. And also we have the cultural dimension called the uncertainty tolerance. So basically some countries can tolerate more uncertainty, like again Nordics probably. In some countries everything has to be controlled and precise, right? And probably managers from those countries would have tendencies to do this. But it's also not only about country, but also about company in general. Right? If you are working on a startup or in a bank, it works differently. So just be mindful about this. It's just how it is here sometimes a little bit. Right. Moving on to another monster that we can encounter. There's the mummy. Right? The mummy is wrapped in bureaucratic papers. Mummy is very slow, but if it gets you, you are wrapped with those papers and you can't really move, escape. You are moving very slowly. Right? So what about the bureaucracy? Basically, you might have the situation where you have to create tickets for everything. You have to have multiple approvals for everything, and it's very annoying. Right? It slows you down. So first of all, what you can do is to be transparent about blockers and slowdowns. Right? So if you have to wait for additional 2 or 3 weeks for something, then you couldn't include this in the sprint. Another team was waiting for this, they couldn't release, and actually you can calculate and translate this time to cost, right? How much it costs the company, and get to management and show them that, hey, if we didn't have that many approvals, we could gain so many, right? And that works well with business people. You can try to carve some kind of responsibility for at least part of what you are doing. So maybe instead of having tickets for every virtual machine that you need, maybe your team or the department could get some pool of virtual machines that they can use and administer by themselves. You can try to do this. You can try to anticipate that you are going to need something, right? Maybe if you have some big infrastructure task, you can create some ticket in advance to create some components on the cloud, for instance. Maybe you won't always need it, but this is much as with cache in the processor, right? Usually you know that you need something in a cache, you get from this. Sometimes you miss the cache and you lose a little bit of time, but in the end you are faster. You can always escalate, CC the manager. And again, remember about culture, right? This uncertainty, tolerance plays a high role here, right? Some countries, some companies just have a lot of bureaucracy, right? Nordic countries are very light on this usually, but if you go to Austria, for instance, something like this is tricky. All right, we go on. Then we have some. What time do we have? 25. All right, we are good. We might encounter some monsters that can turn you into stone, right? So they can slow you down to a halt. You can't basically develop yourself, move everywhere. So sometimes you have those projects that are doing things over and over, the same things. You are not developing, right? Everything is just set in stone, basically. So what could you do there? So first of all, you can try to find some niche for yourself. Maybe you can propose some, proof of concept. Maybe you can just work on some different part of the system. Maybe there's some part of the system that you would enjoy, not necessarily technically, but maybe in the business domain. Like maybe, I don't know, you like trains, so maybe there's some module that is doing something with train reservation or something in the system, or some with buying, whatever. Maybe you can try to go there, ask management to some movement. Be proactive, right? A lot of people come to me and say that, hey, I don't have any self-developments in the project. I'm asking, okay, so what did you propose? Well, actually nothing. You see, nothing gets done on itself, right? So basically, it's important to be proactive, to propose stuff, maybe to do some proof of concept, maybe to try different technology, maybe to try some library, maybe in a new microservice, something like that. Just try, maybe sometimes it will work. You might kind of better your situation, improve your mental model a little bit by thinking that we are not really Python programmers or Java programmers or DevOps or whatever. We are problem solvers, right? There's a business that has problems that we need to solve. Sometimes we do this in code. Sometimes we do this with infrastructure, maybe some clicks on the cloud, maybe some Terraform script. Sometimes it might be an email, right? Or sometimes it might be a discussions by the coffee machine. So basically, we have quite a big arsenal of what we can do. Not necessarily always that has to be the newest tool, right, in the arsenal. Also, when you are fighting with some difficulties in a project, remember that basically you are gaining some skill, right? And those skills are actually transferable to real life, right? Python skills or Kubernetes skills or whatever, you probably don't use that much outside of work. Maybe you do a little bit, but some soft skills, some resistance, this hard shell that you can create around yourself when you have some difficulties, this is actually useful elsewhere, right? But also remember that some tools might have expiration dates, right? So for instance, you might have some old framework in a project, right? You don't want to invest in learning this, but in the end, if you think retrospectively, when you spend some time on learning this framework 10 years ago or 5 years ago, was it time wasted? Well, no, at this point, basically, you had to learn it to do your job, right? And we have to assume that everything that we learn might be obsolete in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. This is just a tool that we need at this very moment. Sometimes some tools are quite long-lived, right? They just do the job, right? So think about being a medieval smith that is using a hammer, right? Basically for 40 years. Hammers don't change that much, but they are doing the work, right? Basically. So sometimes we might not be using most fancy tools, but if they do the job, well, that's just life. We should use them, right? But basically, we can also find this place, maybe in this haunted mansion, this green garden, where you can stay for a while, have some rest, right? It's safe, etc. So maybe if your project does not give you any opportunities to self-develop, maybe you can look outside of the project, right? Maybe there are some other options. So for instance, maybe you could be a team leader in companies that are software houses, solution providers, etc. It might be often quite disconnected from a project, right? In a project, it's often the same role as tech lead, but software house, for instance, in our company, we have separation of tech leads and team leaders. Tech leads are per project, and team leaders are per group of people that are actually changing their projects, working for different clients. Okay, they are just responsible for the people well-being. They are the general interface to the company. So this can give you some interesting soft skills and new experience. Maybe you would like to be a technical recruiter, go to interviews and interview people that wants to join your company, right? This is also when you are preparing some interview questions or talking with a lot of candidates, it also consolidates your knowledge a little bit, so it gives you some assurance in your own capabilities. Okay, maybe there are some opportunities to teach other people stuff, like to be a mentor, for instance. Like we have this, we call this upskill in our company. It's actually a mentoring program. We have around 180 or 100 mentors, around 60 so-called upskills. So let's say courses or small projects that are based on actual commercial situations. So we have like 4 or 5 sprints of creating some application, Python, Java, maybe some front end, maybe some infrastructure, etc. So maybe there's an opportunity like this. Maybe there's a program like this. Maybe you can just mentor people one-on-one. Maybe you can do some presentations. Maybe your company is doing some training, stuff like this. There's a lot of, let's say, modes of that. Maybe you can be kind of like a consultant, so you're moving from team to team and helping them out with some difficult problems. Maybe you could be some kind of content creator, right? Maybe you can write sometimes called the developer relation, developer advocate, or something like this in companies. But you don't have to do this, 100% of your time. You can just do this as a 10% of your time, maybe. So write some articles, create some presentations, go to conferences where your companies have a booth, right, and talk to people, stuff like this. And maybe there is something entirely else you can just figure out that you'd like to do. Just talk to your boss and pitch the idea, propose. Maybe it will happen. So there are also other options outside of the project. All right, the next problem that we can encounter, the problem that we can see the darkness, right? We don't see the purpose of what we are doing. So this is a direct violation of one of those 3 principles in the Drive book. You are just sitting there, you are moving some bits and bytes from one place to another, and you don't really see any sense in this. This is very demotivating. So how can we approach this? Basically, maybe you can try to meet with your users, right? Depends on what kind of software you are writing. Maybe if it is internal software, you can just change the floor or hop on a quick Teams call and talk to the person that is actually using this. Try to get to know this person, how they're using this, and it might help you. Sometimes there are companies who put you in contact with users of the software on the first day even. Right? There's one company that sells vegetables in the UK online, and basically they do software for warehouses and couriers. Not only that, but this is an important part. So if you start as a coder there, you will probably spend half a day or a day with a courier running around the city delivering stuff, or in the warehouse, right, where stuff is sorted. And you can just see the users of the software, what they're actually doing. Maybe if you are doing some product for individual clients, you can actually just use this product. Right? For instance, I was working for a travel aggregator, basically, and I was actually using this in real life to see if there is some train connections between some cities and even to buy some tickets. And it was actually quite fun because when I was buying the ticket in an application, I actually imagined what kind of if conditionals or something are flowing in the code that I actually wrote for this. So it's kind of fun. Sometimes you just might work a little bit with customer support because they have contact with the client. Some companies actually encourage this to take shifts for the customer support or just help them a little bit in answering emails. So you can learn some funny stuff there. Sometimes there is just sudden realizations of what you are doing. Like I had this example. I was driving on the German autobahn. There was a lot of trucks on the right lane. I was working in a logistics company back then that had mostly clients in Germany. So at some point when I was passing all those trucks, I realized that, hey, each of those tracks is just a list of shipments in our database, right? If I would turn right and crash into the track, basically it would be like doing insert into the shipment table, right? Of course, not a good idea to crash into a track, but in general, it helped me, right? Okay, I had the idea that, okay, all those people are ordering all those packages. Somebody is sending them, somebody is transporting them. It's maybe just right in front of, on the right side of me, on the same road, etc. Somebody is getting this package, and it kind of works nice. Also, sometimes having some business visualizations of what the company is doing is helpful. At the very same company, we had this in our canteen. We had this dashboard with basically the map of the world, and there was some light that were showing anywhere somebody is ordering a package or delivering the package, and you can just stand there with a coffee and think that, okay, business is doing quite well, it's working, it's happening, the packages are traveling nice, works quite well. Maybe more in physical offices, but in general. Where are we? 46. Okay. So the next problem that we can encounter in our haunted mansions, sometimes we might have some clues how to get out, how to solve our problems, our issues, but the clues are not very clear, very cryptic, right? So what about the bad user stories? We often have this situation, a project that the user story is not written well, you don't really know what to do, you have to get back to business, clarify, etc. They change their mind, and a lot of people get annoyed because of this. Right, so first of all, again, our exposure principle. So let's talk to the business, right? Get to know those people. Right? If you have this relationship forged, then it will be easier to, for instance, catch them to clarify something, or maybe persuade them, hey, maybe we can somehow figure out some rules how you should create the user stories. You can actually have this acceptance criteria for user stories. So the user story has acceptance criteria for the feature that we are going to implement in our software, but you can have the acceptance criteria for the user story to be put in the backlog, right? For instance, it is well written and we know what the actor is in the system or something like this, right? So you might just create those rules and stick to them and talk to business to get by those rules. You can think about preparation. So sometimes if you know that there will be a refinement or a planning, you can just send the list of tasks that we are going to refine like 3 days in advance. Everyone spend 15 minutes, just look at this, and they might have some questions by the time we start the planning, right? It's not that we start the planning and we don't know anything about this, let's just get on with this. This will be 3, 2, 5, 8, whatever. Right? If you look at this 3 days ago, 2 days ago, you might have already some questions in your mind, and this might improve those stories. Again, be transparent about costs of bad user stories, right? You might tell the business people, the analysts, that hey, you missed this and that, and something like this should be present in the story because we are late on that. Other team was waiting for something, they were not able to do the release, etc., etc. Always translate to some kind of time or cost, right? But on the other hand, don't be this kid that just says that, okay, something changed in the user story while I was in the middle of a sprint, I don't like it, I won't be coding this, right? So this kind of situation, you have to be flexible, right? Sometimes, usually we can't think about all the possible situations in our code, what can go wrong, right? We can think about all the situations how user will use this particular feature, right? We might not have everything in the user story. Also, people make mistakes. Also, business situation might change, right? So let's be flexible and tolerant about this. We even have some formal mechanism for this in sprint, for instance. We can just terminate the sprint and start new sprint if there is some very new information that are groundbreaking from our perspective. So let's have this little bit of flexibility. Right. Next one is deadlines. So you can encounter this cloak monster, right? A lot of people complained about unrealistic deadlines in their project. So what we can do there, basically, first again, maybe I'll try to clarify with the business if it's a real deadline or not, right? Because maybe actually in 2 weeks we have to do this because there is, some papers basically signed in blood with the client, and there are some penalties if we miss the deadline, and we might lose a lot of money, or the company goes bankrupt or whatever, right? So there might be a very solid reason for this deadline, but some deadlines are just get out from the thin air, looks like those. And so somebody figure out, okay, let's do this in 2 weeks, and let's work on that, and then the team is grinding 16 hours per day on Red Bulls and pizza trying to deliver, and turns out that it wasn't really a real deadline in the end. And so try to establish if it is a real deadline and what happens if we miss this, and have some empathy also for business people, because they might be pressured quite a lot on their side. Now we can't basically compress time, right? But we can compress the scope. So if you see that you missed the deadline, then you can negotiate the scope of your tasks. Maybe not everything has to be included in this release. Maybe we can do some shortcuts, right, that we can fix later. And actually, it looks better than missing the deadline. You get the deadline, you get a release with not everything, but maybe there were not very crucial things, and we can move on with that. We can always try to negotiate the scope a little bit in those situations. Remind that business that those magic numbers that you output, like 2, 3, 8, 13, etc., those are not commitments, that are your estimations, your best effort to guess how much time it will take, but it's not a guarantee, right? You can also use this technique of giving 2 estimations, 50% and 90%. So I say that 50% that this task is a 3 point, for instance, but if I need to be sure from 90% that I will do this, I will say it's 8 or 13. If those numbers differ a lot, it tells you that there's high risk with this task. So it's actually adding a little bit of information on what the possible problems might be. Okay, moving towards the end, we have basically our last big problem, the cacophony, so the undead orchestra that's making a lot of noise and prevents you from doing your work. So sometimes we have a lot of distractions in our work. Somebody is asking questions all the time, some people need your help, something is broken in production, etc., right? Not you can get anything done. So in Scrum teams, we often have this idea to have one person that is called the supporter of the week, or sometimes the sufferer of the week, that is responsible for dealing with distractions, right? Shielding the entire team from all the distractions, so monitoring the Slack channel, for instance, for some questions and issues for our team, looking maybe at the production, stuff like this, right? Maybe if you have too much of this in your project, you shouldn't be really working in Scrum. Maybe a Kanban would be better, or some other setup. Basically, it's common for some DevOps teams often. That's kind of continuous flow of tasks works better than planning 2-week sprints. Right? If you are there's this magic window, 2 hours, where usually you can turn off all your communications, Slacks, Teams, etc., and just disappear. This is in past times we had some meetings that lasted 2 hours, and it was quite normal that people won't be available for 2 hours. Okay. Usually nothing bad will happen, unless of course you are responsible for the production, something like this, but be mindful. But in general, if you are in the silent mode for 2 hours, you can actually work miracles, right? You can do a lot of job when nobody is disturbing you. I often do this. I just turn off Teams for 2 hours. I have 4 mini sprints, 25 minutes, 5-minute breaks, and I can actually do more work than an entire day of being in the standby mode when I have this constant distractions from all the time. And if you are working in some kind of service team that has a lot of interaction with other teams, wants a lot from you, maybe you can think about improving your documentation, so writing from some FAQ or something and referring people to there. And again, be mindful of context switching, right? When we have some distraction, we need to switch back after this. So for instance, if you are going to distract some other people with meetings, maybe look at their calendar and try to put this meeting so it's bordering with another meeting before or after, so at least you save one context switch probably in this situation. All right. So, for the end, just several, say, general thoughts or ideas that might be useful for you. First, some hydration. Where are we? 45. Okay. So, first of all, choose your battles carefully. Right? You won't fight every issue in your project because you don't have mental resources for that. So, focus on one or two, maybe three things, and try to win there. And don't fight everywhere because it's probably not possible. Think about this. Your current situation in the project might be bad. You don't feel very well about this. It's not a good situation. But in the end, this project will end. Something will change. Maybe you'll change the company. It will be just a distant memory in the past. It will be an experience for you, right? You might learn a lot from this. You can often recall this, difficult projects, how bad it was, etc. It's often kind of bonding with people as well, so it might be a useful experience for the future. Also, they say that nothing is useless, totally useless. It can be always used as a bad example, how we should not do this. In fact, if you are on 1, 2, 3, if you were just on one project, you don't really know what's the technology, what's the project, how you think that, hey, this is how stuff is done in general. If you were on 2, 3, 4, 5, you can compare, right, in different planes, different scales, and you can actually figure out what you really want, right, what is important for you. Also, remember that you are not your work, right? You might put a lot of effort, might be very stressful, but in the end, you also have other areas of your life, private life, maybe your hobbies, family, friends, etc. And work is just one of the areas, right? In the end, you have to learn to, just say, okay, I did everything that I was supposed to do professionally. It's not my circus, it's not my monkeys, right? It is how it is. Let's keep our distance. Let's not lose our minds over our work. And also, remember, don't burn bridges after you, right? I know everything looks great in front of an explosion, right? If you have a great epic explosion in the background, but you might have this urge to write an email to everyone how bad something is, right? Or to tell somebody to the face about some situation, but just don't do this. You never know what's going to happen. The IT world is surprisingly small. You don't know where you are going to work in 5, 10, 20 years, who you are going to work with, so it's just not worth destroying these relationships that you have over some bad project. Alright, so this is the last slide. So again, QR code, my LinkedIn, if you would like to connect privately and ask some questions. And do we have any questions? I still have 2 minutes. Czy masz sprawdzone podejścia do rozbijania monolitów na mikroserwisy lub komponenty? Fajna książka na ten temat. Kurczę, jak się nazywał ten autor? Sam Newman bodajże, na temat mikroserwisów. Ona jest już dość stara, ale tam jest trochę strategii. Jest też nowa książka, wydaje mi się, którą on napisał. Jeszcze jej nie czytałem, ale pewnie warto zobaczyć. Mieliśmy jeden projekt, gdzie zaczynaliśmy z 8 mikroserwisami, a kończyliśmy z ponad 500 mikroserwisów, więc generalnie jest tam ileś patternów architektonicznych, takich, trzeba patrzeć po tych patternach architektonicznych. Jest na przykład strangle thick pattern, że oplata się mikroserwis jakimś tym takim szkieletem, powiedzmy, który tylko przepuszcza requesty do mikroserwisu, a później gdzieś tam kawałki wydzielamy, no i ten strangle thick gdzieś tam przesyła do tych nowych fragmentów, więc wiecie, to jest długie pytanie i długa dyskusja. Ale możemy się jeszcze złapać na LinkedInie i może coś będę w stanie więcej podpowiedzieć. Dobra, jak radzisz sobie z zarządzaniem wersjami i rollbackami w projektach pełnych legacy code? No tak. Zarządzanie wersjami. Wiecie, tutaj znowu można popatrzeć na te patterny bardziej deploymentowe. Nie mamy na przykład blue-green deploymenty, gdzie trzymamy sobie jedną i drugą wersję produkcji i tak naprawdę możemy przełączyć między jedną a drugą. To jest jedno podejście. Mamy pytanie pytanie, czy mamy serwis, który tak naprawdę trzyma jakieś bazy danych pod spodem, jakieś dane, jakieś źródła, czy tylko przesyłamy sobie tak naprawdę API, idziemy dalej do upstreamu. Jeżeli tylko opieramy się na API, a nie trzymamy żadnych swoich danych, to zwykle jest dużo łatwiejsze. Da się to zrobić tak, że wrzucamy, patrzymy co się dzieje, puszczamy na przykład tam 1% użytkowników, patrzymy czy jakieś błędy pojawiają, 2%, 5%, gdzieś tam z jakąś progresją, jak coś się zaczyna walić, no to wtedy rollbackujemy i dopiero badamy co się wydarzyło. Więc to jakby da się opakować takie bezpieczne podejście, żeby nie rzucać czegoś od razu, wielki Big Bang, wszystko się wysypuje, tylko właśnie tak po kawałku. Jest trochę narzędzi do tego, akurat używaliśmy jakiegoś in-house'owego wtedy rozwiązania. Ale to też są jakieś tam patenty architektoniczne związane z mikroserwisami. Też chyba sama Newmana tutaj polecam. Wydaje mi się, że w jego książkach też coś takiego było opisane. Dobra, mamy 50. Nie wiem, czy jeszcze mamy czas na kolejne pytanie. Nie ma więcej pytań. Dobra, słuchajcie, to jakby coś tam się właśnie pojawiło, coś macie na jakieś NDA, nie możecie pisać konkretnie, to zapraszam Was do kontaktu. Postaram się jakoś tam pomóc w miarę skromnych możliwości, a nagranie pojawi się na YouTubie, z tego co pamiętam. No i tyle. Słuchajcie, dziękuję Wam bardzo serdecznie. Trzymajcie się.